Hello everyone, I'm Maria and welcome back to my Nook. In today's video I want to wrap up all the books that I have read in 2022, but since I have already reviewed all of those books in-depth reading wrap-ups that I did basically per month throughout the year, I don't want to review them all over again, since that would be kind of repetitive and a little annoying for myself. So I want to do that a little differently. I saw Cassandra Lynn doing a video at the end of 2021. So first of all, shout out to her because I took some inspiration from that video. Since I already track my reading in various ways, my book journal, my Notion, my Goodreads, I thought, why not take those reading stats that I have basically been tracking all year anyway and put them together, compile them, and see what they show me or tell me, if they even tell me anything. But I thought it would just be fun, so let's jump right into it. First of all, I want to mention that since I'm not reviewing all the books I've read in depth again, I just put pictures of the piles of books that I have read sorted by month, and I am going to title them accordingly. So in total, I have read 44 books. I have read 2 books in January, also 2 books in February, only a single book in March. But I have to say, I only finished 1 book in March, but I still read a lot. I finished another book like 2 days into April, so maybe I could have finished that in March, but I didn't, so here we are. I finished 3 books in April, also 3 books in May, and then I finished 5 whole books in June, 6 books in July. Guess I just had a lot of time on my hands in summer, because I also finished 5 books in August. And then I only finished 3 books in September, 5 books again in October, 4 books in November, and 5 books in December. As you can see, the month in which I finished the least amount of books was March, and the month in which I finished the most amount of books was July. My favorite reading month was, I guess, April. It's a bit hard to decide since my reading also changed a lot throughout the year. It changed a lot how much time I had to read and how many books I read and what kind of books I read. I read a lot of romance in the first half of the year and a lot of fantasy in the second half of the year, so that's hard to compare. But I guess April just had the most books that I really loved. I don't know, again, it's hard to compare and hard to decide. In total, I have read 15,222.5 pages. Yes, I also count half pages. Yes, I am that meticulous. But can we just take a second to look at how kind of satisfying this number looks? I don't know, maybe it's just me. But also I want to note that whenever I'm counting pages, I am not only counting the pages of books that I read for entertainment. I studied until the end of September in 2022, so whenever I had to read papers or articles, or we had to read books or only certain chapters from books for university, I also counted that as reading. Those pages do not make up a huge amount of my reading, but they do make up some amount of the pages I read last year, so just a side note. The average time it took me to read a book was 7.9 days, so almost 8 days. And another real quick note about this is that I obviously took not into account the books that I had to read for my studying, because some of those books I had to read in very specific ways. Like, for example, our professor would say, this week you have to read this chapter, and next week you have to read that chapter, and so on. So that was a completely different reading. For this particular stat, I only counted the books that I read on my own accord, where it was my choice when to read and how much to read. I mean, it wasn't always only my choice, sometimes I just didn't have time or energy, but you get the point. The longest book I have read in 2022 was A Conjuring of Light by Byyee. It was 624 pages long, and it took me 12 days to read. The shortest book I read in 2022 was Im Kopf von Sherlock Holmes, which was a German book. I read it in German, but I think the original is in French, and there's also an English version which is called Into the Mind of Sherlock Holmes, or In the Mind of Sherlock Holmes, something like that. Anyway, that book had 96 pages and I finished it in 2 days. In total, I have listened to 21 audiobooks, I read 4 ebooks, 29 paperbacks, 4 hardbacks, and 4 graphic novels. Here, another note. I like to listen to audiobooks while reading the same book along as a physical copy. That means that after finishing that book, I will have finished a physical book and an audiobook, even though I technically only finished one book. So just as a side note for this stat again. As I already mentioned, my reading changed throughout the year, and in the first half of the year I read 16 books, but in the second half of the year I read 28 books. Again, I finished my study in September, so I guess I just had a lot more time on my hands during the second half of the year. Out of the 44 books that I have read in 2022, I own 38. And out of the 365 days of the year, I have read 341. The reason why this number is so high is because I had set myself the goal to reanimate my reading habit, and building a habit is pretty hard. I tried that and I really put my mind to building that reading habit again. So I genuinely just tried reading every single day, even if I only read a single page or maybe 2 pages in a day, as long as I read on that day. So that's why that number is so high. On the other hand, I only read 44.6 pages per day on average if I only count the 341 days I actually read, but it was 41.7 pages per day on average if I count the full 365 days of the year. About genres that I read. I know it's a bit hard to put books into genres sometimes because there's subgenres, and many books can be put into multiple genres and all that sort of stuff. But I try to divide the books that I have read into 5 main genres, basically. So I have read 15 fantasy books, 17 romance books, 7 thriller/crime books, 3 mystery books that were not necessarily thriller or crime books, because I know thriller and crime books are usually also mystery, but there's mystery books that are not necessarily thriller or crime books. You know what I mean? Other than that, I also read 2 non-fiction books. Therefore, my most read genre is the romance genre, and my least read genre was non-fiction. My top 7 books of 2022 in no particular order are Beach Read by Emily Henry, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood, What If by Randall Munro, The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. My favorite book covers of 2022. There were so many gorgeous book covers in 2022, and obviously I will be referring to the book covers that I own myself because there's different editions and special editions and all that sort of stuff. But there's the Caraval trilogy, the Inheritance Games trilogy, the Shades of Magic trilogy, and the Shades of Magic, the Steel Prince graphic novels. All of these books I have also at least liked, if not even loved, so that might have played a part in it, but they're all pretty great. My highest rating in 2022 was obviously 5 stars, but let's be honest, if I could have, I would have rated some books higher than that. My lowest rating was 2.75 stars, and let's not talk about those books anymore. My average star rating throughout the year was 4.34 stars. Now, for me, this is not particularly special, but I've heard plenty of people say that such a high average star rating throughout the whole year is kind of unusual, and I don't know why this has happened for me. Maybe it's because I've gotten back into reading only in 2022, so I don't have much to compare the books I have been reading with to evaluate how to rate them, or maybe it's because I have a very specific taste and know very well what I like and what I don't like. So maybe I just pick out my personal jewels from the stones before I even start reading a book, and that causes my ratings to be higher. I don't know, I really have no idea, but let's see what 2023 holds, right? In total, I have read 21 different authors and 14 different genres, but again, plenty of books already hold different genres in themselves, so don't know what this tells me. I have started 8 series in 2022 and finished 6 of those, and the other 2 are ongoing series, so the author has not completed them yet, so I technically can't finish the series. Those were all the stats that I have prepared for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe let me know some of your stats in the comments and how your 2022 went regarding books. Otherwise, I hope your 2023 will be nothing short of amazing, and I hope I will see you guys in my next video or somewhere else on the internet. Bye!